I said Halo 2 is the best Halo game, and sure, I stand by that. I mean, Halo 2 has the best gameplay, the best soundtrack, introduced online multiplayer, was a massive step forward from Combat Evolved, and had a great story. But Halo Reach. Halo Reach is my favorite Halo game. Now, I know that a lot of people disagree with this. Mostly people who read the Fall of Reach novel and then got mad when Halo Reach retconned it. But people were upset enough to make a website dedicated to claiming that Halo Reach is not canon. Unfortunately, Halo Reach is not canon.net appears to have been taken down, so let's have a toast to its life and death. Personally, I think expecting the writers of the games, who had been working on them for the last decade, to remain beholden to the ideas presented by the writer of the books, who as far as I can tell had absolutely nothing to do with the games, is kind of stupid. It doesn't matter how good it is, supplementary media is always going to be exactly that, supplementary. But I digress. I'm not here to talk about the war between fans of the books and fans of the games, because we can simply just enjoy them for what they are, canon or not. And luckily, Halo Reach's campaign is peak. Absolute cinema. I've played through it like 30 times, and fully intend to play through it 30 more, and then another 30 after that. But before I talk about how good I think the story is, I think that first I need to talk about its limitations. I mean, after all, it's a prequel. It's always going to be restricted by what comes after. We know that Reach is going to fall to the Covenant, because that's what's already happened come Halo Combat Evolved. It's pretty difficult to write an engaging story where people already know the outcome, so the fact that Halo Reach managed to do exactly that is fairly impressive. But how did it manage to do that? Well, Halo Reach works because this isn't a game about overcoming the odds and defeating an impossible enemy like every other Halo game. This is a story about a desperate struggle to delay the inevitable. Halo Reach doesn't work despite the fact we know how it ends. It works because we know how it ends. It leads to Halo Reach being what is probably the most compelling and emotional story in any Halo game. And I would be willing to say that George's sacrifice is probably the most impactful moment in the entire series. You watch as he gives up his life, thinking that he is saving his home planet and everyone on it. He dies thinking he changed everything. But we know that before even the rest of the Covenant fleet arrives, that his death was in vain. At best, he slowed them down, and at worst, all he did was piss them off. But where Halo Reach really shines isn't in the big moments, as good as they are, but rather all the small details throughout the game. The thing that Reach is best at is subtly showing the player exactly what is going on without ever having to say a thing. I mean, you watch George's heroic sacrifice and you go, oh shit, they are fully willing to kill these guys off. And then just 2 missions later, you watch Kat's completely unceremonious death and go, oh shit, they aren't just willing, they are going to kill these guys off. Also, can I take a moment to talk about how well written Kat's death is, despite the fact she just gets domed without any warning. There is no build-up, no fanfare, she doesn't go out in a blaze of glory, and that tells the player exactly what is happening. The story does not care if Noble Team survives. They are not the Master Chief. They are not immortal. And yet, it was despite not getting a big build-up perfectly foreshadowed. The communications losing signal due to an EMP that also knocks out the Spartan shields. Kat missing the elevator button due to being disorientated. And finally, she falls behind while running, showing you how she is the weakest and easiest target. The first time you watch the cutscene, you won't see it coming. But the second time you notice how the game does everything except shout it at you. It's this amazing attention to detail that makes Halo Reach as great as it is. As another example, how about how the game subtly tells you that a character has accepted their death? Kat, suddenly shot in the head, still wearing a helmet. Emil goes down fighting, still wearing his helmet. George and Carter sacrifice themselves, but remove their helmets beforehand. 6 is probably where the line gets a little blurry, but personally I think that since he removes his helmet, he has accepted his fate, but he's going to take down as many of those alien bastards with him as humanly possible. Halo Reach also has some of the best characters in the whole series. George is my man. I love the juxtaposition of the biggest, scariest guy on the team being the kindest and most empathetic. He's like a big teddy bear with a 50 cal and a kill count somewhere in the thousands. It's also kind of interesting that the only Spartan 2 is the most human on the squad, despite Spartan 2's being known for being somewhat inhuman. Despite George being my favourite Noble Team member now, back when I first played Halo Reach, Emil had that honour. And yes, it was definitely because he was the cool edgy one with the skull on his helmet. But in my defense, I was like 10. Emil has that main character energy, and bro is still a badass. I mean, he went down fist fighting an elite with a sword stabbed through his chest, and so he's still my second favourite character. I haven't 100% outgrown the edgy phase yet. Finally, 6. He honestly rivals the Master Chief for coolest character. Admittedly, the fact that you can customize him to look like whatever you want and you get to play the game as your own Spartan probably helps. But 6 is the guy that fought by himself on a planet that was getting glassed by a Covenant armada for hours. Or days, I'm not 100% sure which. On top of that, when the game came out, he was one of the 2 Spartans considered hyperlethal. I know they changed the meaning of hyperlethal in the lore and it no longer applies, but to a 10-year-old me, that didn't matter. It was just cool. Also, he outranks the Master Chief, which is hilarious to me. Halo Reach also has some of the best campaign levels in any Halo game. The Saber level is probably my absolute favourite level in the entire franchise. That and the Falcon section of New Alexandria. Yeah, I think I just like the sections where you get to use flying vehicles. And the best part? We don't have any stupid Flood Maze levels, just the coolest objective in Halo history. The next thing the game has going for it is the god tier gameplay. Out of all the games after Halo 2, Reach definitely feels like the most natural evolution of the classic Halo formula. Halo 3 always felt like a worse Halo 2 to me, and Halo 4, despite really liking the gameplay, it doesn't quite feel like Halo to me. But Reach feels like classic Halo, while still adding new stuff and feeling fresh. The weapon balancing does admittedly feel a little off, but every single Halo game also has that problem, and Reach isn't even close to being the worst in this regard. I know that a lot of people also hate the weapon bloom, but I don't think I ever got good enough at the game to notice, and it's also not quite as big of a deal in campaign as it is in multiplayer. So I don't really have an issue with it myself, but I do get why people would hate it. The armor abilities are probably the best addition to the gameplay. Sure, I guess they do effectively the same thing that equipment did in the previous games, but making it a standard part of the player's arsenal does really change the way the game is played. When playing other Halo games, equipment is either just something that makes you overpowered for a short time, like the overshield in Combat Evolved, or something that I honestly don't think anyone uses, and I kind of forget is in the game, like all of the equipment in Halo 3. In Halo Reach, it's actually a core part of the game, and is probably a large reason that it does feel like the next step for Halo. Too bad Bungie wanted nothing to do with Halo after this. I think the final main thing that Reach did right was the character customization. Reach has by far the best character customization in any Halo game. So many different armor sets, each with multiple variants, and every single one looks so good. I'm a bit of a basic bitch, so I mostly end up just choosing the ODST armor, but there are still so many other good ones. And the fact that you can use it in the campaign is still really cool to me. I may be easy to please, but come on, you have to admit that seeing your custom Spartan in a cutscene is cool. Well, I've covered the things I love about this game, so I suppose I should talk about the things that I don't like so much. Well, I say things, but I really mean thing. Because I only have one real complaint about Halo Reach. But that one complaint is probably the deciding factor in what makes Halo Reach second place in my ranking of Halo games. I'm not huge on Halo Reach's multiplayer. I don't think it's bad or anything, but I'm going to choose to play Halo Combat Evolved or Halo 2 for multiplayer pretty much every time. Even back when I was a kid, I'd play Reach for the campaign, but Combat Evolved for the multiplayer. I do enjoy it, and I do play it more than those other two these days, but that's not so much because I really want to, and just because it's difficult finding matches in either game. I don't know, but Reach's multiplayer just doesn't hit quite the same for me. It's kinda difficult to put into words why, so all I can really say is that the vibes are off. I know that doesn't really explain anything, but sometimes you can't explain why you like or dislike something, you just do. And I think that's the end of my list. I guess it shows how good of a game Halo Reach is that my only complaint is that I prefer the multiplayer in some of the other games. I am fully willing to admit that a fair chunk of my love for this game is just nostalgia. But also it's still just a really good game. I still think that Halo 2 is the best Halo game, but Halo Reach is a very close second. If it weren't for the fact that I prefer Halo 2 multiplayer, I'd definitely think that Reach is the better game. Halo Reach is the perfect send-off. It almost feels like Bungie's love letter to Halo. I'm sure the devs who have been working on the series for the last 10 years poured their hearts and souls into this game, and it's why Halo Reach is my favourite Halo game.